Heck.
No. How many more people you got coming on?
Well, the Osmonds. I've got the Osmonds coming.
The camera's
Hey,
on.
we're back on. We're back on. Live television is great, and when you do it on a Monday morning, it's really fun. I tell you, I was talking with Joe Palo, so we'll blame all of the problems on Joe, and that's fine because Kim does that on Wednesdays, and actually all the other hosts throughout the week blame everything on Joe Palo. So, see, I've already learned how to be a host. Just blame it on Joe. But welcome back to Tennessee Valley this morning. I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable. How about you, Jennifer?
I think so.
This isn't the
I'm
hardest
getting
thing in the world to do.
It's not too bad.
But sometimes it is, depending on the guests that you have. Luckily, we've got some great guests and got a good friend of mine, Jeff Salyer, with Lee University, just in case you haven't figured that out. Most of the folks are from Lee University today. And Jeff is, what are you now, a professor of something?
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Doctor yet?
I'm the associate director of video production at Lee, and then I'm a lecturer in communication.
A lecturer?
A lecturer. I lecture.
Okay. And you've been at Lee how long?
Oh, man. I've been at Lee since a student in 97. I've been working since 2001, full-time.
Stayed in Cleveland because you love it.
I love Cleveland. Met my wife here.
Married a Lee University student.
Married a Lee grad. I'm a Lee grad. We're all
Right.
Lee grads. We can't all go to MTSU, Alan. I'm sorry.
like me.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Cleveland's a good place for Lee people. There's a lot of Lee people here, and Cleveland embraces Lee, and Lee embraces Cleveland. I think it's a good thing.
Well, in your case, you didn't come quite as far as Florida or Scotland.
No,
You just came down from Lake City?
Oak Ridge,
Oak
Clinton
Ridge.
area. Yeah, I went to high school in Oliver Springs, the small town. But so I'm pretty local, fairly local. My mom went to school here. My mom met my dad. My dad actually went to Cleveland State, and they met here. And so this is kind of where our family kind of began too.
Fantastic. And I've known Jeff for several years. For those of you who don't know, I work with United Way, but we do a campaign video each year, and Lee University provides the manpower. All I do is just lead them in the direction, and they do all the great work. And Jeff has been involved, I guess, for the last 7-8 years.
I think I've been doing it since '99 with Dr. Gilbert, and it's been a while.
It has been.
Do a good
and
job.
always do a great. And we have fun.
Oh yeah,
doing it.
It's a lot of fun.
And as a matter of fact, did we have your little girl on at one time? We didn't have her on there, but
no,
we did a story.
We did a story, Imagination Library, which she absolutely
Right.
loves. So we
Right.
got to talk about her a little bit.
Yeah, but that's not the reason we've got Jeff on here. Although it's nice to find out a little bit about him for those of you that don't know. But Jeff is also a student at Regent
University,
University,
which is Virginia Beach.
Right.
I'm a PhD student, and I'm studying rhetoric and cinema, or film, and how they work together, and what film does for society and for culture.
And one of the things that you get to do as part of a student there is go to Colorado.
Oh, Utah.
Excuse
Utah.
me.
Yeah,
they all blend together out there. The square states, you know.
It was snowy, so we flew over Colorado.
Okay.
But yeah, I got to go to Colorado, or Utah. You got me confused now. I went to the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah, which is right outside Salt Lake.
What is the Sundance Festival?
The Sundance Film Festival is probably the ultimate film festival for independent cinema. Robert Redford started it back in the late 80s, and it's continued, and they have thousands of entries every year, and they take a couple hundred, and the cutting edge of film as far as acting and shooting and producing and the way that it gets distributed is done at Sundance. And so it is kind of the marker for the industry. When you go out there, half of LA is at Sundance and half of New York is in Sundance. Almost the entire industry, they say, is there because it's that important of an event.
Now, this is your second trip?
It's my second trip in a row. I went last year. Last year I went as a student, and this year I went as a teacher's assistant for the class that we offer at Regent in Rhetoric of Independent Cinema.
Okay. What stood out this year? You don't have to necessarily say what film stood out, but was there something? I'm sure it's different each year, although it's a lot the same. But anything that was so special this year about it?
Well, Sundance often, when the programmers, what they call it, they choose the films, they often choose from a theme. And this year they claimed that there was no theme, and it didn't seem like there was much of a theme. The one thing that Sundance always does is those films ask questions, and it's usually questions of great value. You know, why is life the way it is, and how can we deal with life, and you know, what is the meaning of life? These are they ask these really grandiose questions and try to answer them in their little films, and often the answers are left, you know, aren't there, but they ask them, and that's kind of the general idea you get from Sundance every year is these questions. And as a rhetorician and as someone who studies these things, it's fun to point out these questions that sometimes they don't even know they're asking. And as a Christian, it's good to try to point out some of the answers that they're asking from my perspective and my worldview. And that's our goal. We did some writing and we did some exercises that would allow us to do that.
Sort of say it's more than just going over there and walking down the street to see this film and then walking down the street and seeing this film. Mm-hmm. I know that you were attending some lectures.
Yes. We have a thing called the Wind Rider Forum, which was started by the Pretty brothers, and they are documentary film producers.
Pretty,
Priddy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you Google them, you'll see some of the stuff they've done. They've done some really, I get that all the time. Yeah. But and it was a part of the Wind Rider Forum, and the Wind Rider Forum is an opportunity for over 100 students from 5 different institutions: Biola University, Pepperdine, Taylor University, BYU. And a few, and Fuller Theological Seminary, to get together, and we have discussions with filmmakers. They have lectures. They give an award out this year. Actually, Daniel Destin Cretton, which is Paul Cretton's nephew, won the Spirit of Wind Rider Award for his work on Sundance films. And last year it was Ralph Winter of X-Men fame. He's the producer of X-Men that I got to meet. And we really seek out how to speak to culture through film. And the Wind Rider helps students understand that it can be done through writing and through interaction in the industry. And a lot of those people that are there are aspiring filmmakers themselves. And so they try to inject into their lives to tell good stories in their films.
Do you consider yourself a filmmaker?
Not necessarily. Okay. I did co-produce with some local people, some Lee people, a film with Miles Matsuno this past year that he's editing right now, that he's going to submit to Sundance and a few other places. And if that goes through, I guess that makes me somewhat of a filmmaker, but I'm more of a critic and an enjoyer of film.
You saw some films that you really liked and some films that you probably really didn't like.
Right.
What was one that you think? Now, are these films that we may end up seeing in theaters? Yeah,
you will eventually, and sometimes they get limited release, and sometimes they get big release, and lately it's been more limited. But last year a couple of films, Another Earth and Take Shelter, were some big hits, and they actually made it to some screens. They played at the Majestic here in Cleveland, or in Chattanooga.
Sorry, so we got a new
the Majestic in Chattanooga. I wish we'd get some of these films here in Cleveland, but this year there's a couple of films that I think will make it here. One being Safety Not Guaranteed with Mark Duplass, and it was an interesting time travel film. It also had a girl that stars in I believe it's not Community, but I think it's Community. No, Parks and Rec.
Okay.
And it's a really funny, it could be a well-received film. Typical Sundance films are dark and they're edgy and they have foreboding themes, but this one is kind of more of a comedic theme and of love and life and searching for things. And I think that's one we will probably see here. And then there's a few other. The one that won the Grand Jury Prize, although fairly strange, I think for most viewers, will be well received. It was called Beasts of the Southern Wild, and it's about people who live below the levees in New Orleans. And it was not a documentary. It was really a fantasy kind of film of apocalyptic mythology. Very well. It was shot extremely well, and so that'll get a limited release here. Being in the South, we don't get as many of these films because some of them do have really edgy content, and I did see some that doesn't necessarily comport to what I believe, but the questions that are there are what's important, and being able to dialogue with these things.
Now, will this help you? You say you're a lecturer, so I consider you a teacher.
Right.
Will some of what you saw over there blend its way into your teaching?
It does, and it has. I get to take these films as examples of stuff, because college students like independent film because it's not force-fed from Hollywood like you typically get with blockbusters, and they don't want to be force-fed what they like. And so I do get to bring some of these films in. We have a partnership at Wind Rider with the Angeles Student Film Festival, which is a student film festival that really promotes values. And they give me a disc of their short films. And last year, they had a film get nominated for an Oscar by Luke Matheny, and it actually won the Oscar from that film, and I met Luke. And then this year, they had another film get nominated for an Oscar that we were able to screen that I'll probably bring into the classroom as well. And it's the ability to discuss these independent films, and for my filmmaker students, the ones that are aspiring filmmakers, it gives them a mark to strive towards. And so there are some good lessons to be learned from this experience.
Had a good time.
I did have a great time.
I bet. And poor April, your wife.
Yeah, she was here with both kids.
Yeah, they missed you.
They did. They did.
But a man's got to do what a man's got to do.
Well, Sundance only comes around once a year, and she understands that when I get to go, and this time I got to teach some.
That's good.
And it was very beneficial for me, and she understands my passion for film. And so we try to weigh it out between film and basketball, which one wins out. And this time of year is just not good for her. Yeah. But I try to make it up to her in the summertime and the fall.
That's good. One thing I will mention, and knowing you, I know that you have been involved in, I don't know if it's something that you teach, because I know you teach a lot of the classics. You bring in the classic movies and let the students watch them, and then I guess they critique them and learn from those. But this may be the project that you were doing with Regent, and that is boxing films. What was that again?
I did it. My thesis was on the Rocky films.
There we go.
That was back when I was doing my master's a couple of years ago, and I actually looked at Rocky as a hero and the hero's journey and wrote my thesis on that. But I do teach film history here or at Lee from 1890 all the way up until the 70s, which I'm teaching right now, the 60s and 70s, and we get to discuss some of the older films, and I get to expose them to students because there's some really good films that people discount because they're black and white or they're silent films or they don't have current stars, and then when they watch them they're just in awe at the good stories that can be told, and I try to use that as an encouragement keep telling good stories.
And funny thing is, one of the films that is nominated for a lot of awards this year is a silent film, The Artist.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and predict that it's going to win, but because it is so different. And fortunately, it did come to this market, so I'm going to try to go see that this week sometime before the Oscars happen.
Well, then I don't guess George Clooney will be coming to your class because, of course, he was in The Descendants. And
yeah, that one, it's going to be a tough battle between those two, but I really do think The Artist, because it is so unique, the Oscars, the Academy is going to love that.
Fantastic. What's it like teaching with Ron Gilbert?
Dr. Gilbert is
Dr. Gilbert.
Yeah, I have to call him Dr. Gilbert. He's my boss. You had to shout out to your boss.
That's right.
And had to shout out to Fred. I got to shout out to Dr.
bosses.
Gilbert and say, yeah, Dr. Gilbert's the greatest boss. He and Dr. Khan are the best bosses anyone could ever have. Was that good?
That's great.
Okay.
And you also mentioned April earlier.
I mentioned April, and I mentioned Fred because I've known Fred for a long time.
So
he could probably tell more stories on Fred
I got
than
some Fred stories, but we won't go there because I like Fred a lot. So
mentioned Paul Cretton.
I mentioned Paul Cretton. Yeah.
You just hit the.
I'm a name dropper. I saw Helen Hunt and John Hawkes and William H. Macy at Sundance. There's more names I could drop.
Well,
James Olmos, Edward James Olmos. He came and spoke to us at Wind Rider, so I got to shake his hand and get pictures with him.
And last year, I remember you saying you got to sit with at a table with the director. Was it the X-Men director?
Yeah, with Ralph Winter. He was the producer. He produced all the X-Men up until Wolverine, and then he also produced a lot of the original Star Treks, the films. So he's a big time. He didn't get to come this year, but he's a big time film producer. So we get to rub elbows with some people.
And see, you started off, your career started off with United Way campaign videos.
Exactly. As a student, we jumped on those United Way videos, and I wouldn't be the same person if I didn't do those.
There you go.
See?
Did you get that? Okay.
Making everybody happy, right?
I think this will show on YouTube, so we'll be sure to send people there. Jeff, appreciate you coming by. I know that you're a busy man during basketball season and all, but and Monday mornings are not easy for a man who has a 4-month-old and everything. So thank you for coming this morning.
No problem.
And hope we will see you again. Hope we see one of your films sometime
I hope
at
Miles's
Sundance.
Film. Yeah, hopefully Miles's film will get there. We're hoping.
And maybe someday you'll get to meet Robert Redford.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Since it's
Dreams
named after
do
him.
come true.
Right, exactly.
But thanks for coming. Jeff Salyer with Lee University, and we appreciate him coming by. We've got a couple of more Lee folks coming up next, so stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.